Fans of the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40,000, thank you very much for joining me for a painting update video. And today we are talking about interiors, and in particular the interior detailing on the Terrax Pattern Termite Assault Drill from Forge World. So yesterday evening and afternoon I painted the interior of this resin model by Forge World. And before I assemble this together, I just thought I'd share with you what I'd done. It's nothing particularly fancy or complicated, but you know, it's just an example of painting a vehicle interior to make it look a little bit nice and give something to see from the outside looking in. Right, so we've got 6 parts. We've got the 2 sides, we've got the roof, we've got the floor, we've got the main bearing, and we've got the driver's hatch. Where should we start? Well, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So this is the floor to the Terrax, and that's the underside. Right, so my approach here was to paint the interior in a grey, and for the grey I actually mixed Vallejo model colour white and grey together to get a sort of mid-grey, and that was my base. I then applied a wash of Nuln Oil over the entire interior surface, and then I went in and started doing some detailing. So that's a basic paint scheme. I then did 2 heavy dry brushes, one with the original colour, one with some additional white added in to bring out the highlights. Then I went in and did some detailing. Looking at the lower deck, I did a couple of extra things here. I applied an additional wash of Nuln Oil to the grilling, or grating we could call it. The grilling sounds like it's barbecue. And then what I did was pick out the rivet details. And all I very simply did was just put a dot of Nuln Oil around the rivet, and then picked out the actual rivet head with Citadel Stormhost Silver. Very simple, very straightforward, and didn't take too long to do. I then applied some chipping and rusting effects to where the door is, and to do that I first dry brushed with, I think it was Stormhost Silver again, and then I took some rhinox hide and just dotted in some blotches of rust like that. On the other side I'd done a slightly different approach where I'd done painted chips, and that came out a little bit differently like that. So I painted the black area, then put a pale grey within the boundary for black, and then added a bit of rhinox hide, a dappling for rust. Of the two, I actually preferred how this came out, so I'm going to stick with that one. To be quite honest, having done this one first, I wasn't really bothered about changing it. I then took some more Stormhost Silver and a nice dry brush and just dry brushed onto the grills, the floor grills, just to give that effect of wear on the paint. So there you go, very straightforward. That's the floor. Now let's look at the roof. So the roof, we've got some additional detailing. We've got these beams with all the rivets. So again, exactly the same drill with painting the rivets. A Nuln Oil shade, then followed by a Stormhost Silver rivet head. I did the same on the weapon modules, picked out that little handle, also in Stormhost Silver. I might not necessarily use Stormhost Silver if I was doing this on the exterior of the vehicle. Because this is internal detailing, I wanted a brighter silver to make it stand out, because of course there's not going to be a lot of light looking in. So yeah, that's the roof, dead simple. If you're painting the internal detailing on the Terrax, you need to remember to paint this edge here, because this isn't a lip. I originally left that unpainted, but that's actually part of a wall as opposed to being a lip where there's an overlap with another part. Yeah, very straightforward. There are a couple of little air bubbles that I didn't fill on the interior. I didn't really think it was worthwhile, the effort involved in filling them for the benefit gained. Let's now look at the left and the right hull. So I've got 2 pieces here, and I had a bit more fun with these, although they are relatively simple, so you understand where they go. There's one on each side and they go like that. And to the front you have the weapon bay, and slightly offset to the rear you have the occupant hatch. Now, the extra detailing here, well, I suppose a couple of things. I did the same dry brushing and weathering effect on the bottom of the door. So obviously this is a kind of a anyway up vehicle, but I just did it on the underside, and then that lines up nicely with the corresponding weathering effects on the floor. So yeah, quite like that. Then I'm sure you're all interested in the hazard striping. So what the hazard striping is on, this is on the internal door of the weapon bay. I thought, well, why not? I'll pick that out. It's quite a nice and prominent feature. To start with, I painted the doors with 2 thin coats of Vallejo model colour white. The yellow I then painted over the whole doors, apart from the gap between the 2 doors. And the yellow is Bad Moon's yellow, and that's a Citadel paint. And then finally, I went back to Vallejo black and freehanded on the hazard stripes. To get the orientation, I used the tooth on the door. Which way does this go round? So I did it the same on both sides. Oh yeah, that's right. So I did top right to bottom left. That's how I did that. So it's been a while since I've done any freehanding like that, but it's not too bad. Quite pleased with how it came out. Might need to just touch a little bit of the yellow up in there. And to paint that, I used a new Winsor & Newton brush that I'd got myself, a 00. So it's very small, fine point, and that worked really well. Very nice brush for doing tiny little details like this. They're not perfect, but I think for an interior detail and freehand, I was quite pleased with them. So let's take a look at the second side of the hull. And here we've got exactly the same drill, but reversed. That was maybe a little bit messier, but it's still pretty decent. It's good enough. Again, we've got the chipping effects and the rusting and weathering on the entrance into the vehicle. And if we put these together, like that, yeah, there you go. That's how they go together. I put the first one on the wrong way around. That's right, all the doors are lined up now, all the weapon bay doors. It's top left to bottom right, I did the hazard striping. And there you go, you can see the weather effects of the door. As I say, I prefer how this one came out here, and I think that's the technique I'll use for any additional weathering I need to do on this model. Nothing too fancy, but for just looking inside the vehicle, I think it's sufficient. And in all fairness, the detail on the Terrax inside it is pretty sparse. And that's actually, I think that feels right for the type of vehicle. I mean, this is kind of like a subterranean tunneling vehicle, so you can imagine it having a lot of buffeting and smashing around. You don't want lots of controls and levers and edges sticking into the crew compartment. So I feel that Will Hayes got the amount of internal detail right on this vehicle. And just to finish up on the internal detail, we'll have a look at the front and rear partitions of the compartment. So this is a part called the main bearing. Again, all the same colours. Picked out the rivets with, was it Runefang silver? And then a little highlight with Stormhost silver just on the top of the rivet. This large rotational area, this toothed disc, I painted in lead belcher, washed in Nuln oil, and then dry brushed up with Stormhost silver. So that looks decent. And then the final component is the driver's hatch, and painted exactly the same way, apart from the only additional details. Got a couple of rivets picked out the same way as before. And then I painted the handles to the driver's hatch black, and then picked them out in Stormhost silver to make them, as I say, really stand out and pop. I looked at some pictures of submarine door handles from the real world, just to get some ideas around these, and they tend to be in very bright polished metal, a chrome look. There's a bit of a real world thinking that's gone into those colours. They're all the parts, so this is now ready to assemble. Let's just try to see if we can get a look inside the vehicle with it all positioned together. Now it's going to be hard to show this because of camera focus and also because of lighting, but we will have a little go. The camera is wanting to focus at the nearest thing, so it's a bit difficult to show it, but I guess you can get a feel for how it looks. And of course, to the naked eye, I can see more than the camera is able to, because I can focus where I want. And if we put the driver's hatch on, we've got the interior again, and if we flip it round and fit the main bearing, and get my hand out of the way so we can have a little light. Now let's see if we can just, there we go. So I've just focused on the rear of the hull there. And now we can actually see the interior better. There, that's better, isn't it? Yeah, it looks pretty good. Happy with that. Let's just spin it round and do it with the driver's hatch again. Okay. I do like the look of the vehicle, and I love the design concepts around the weapon bays. I think they're really clever. Basically, the weapon bays are mounted on the internal crew section that rotates within the hull, and it would lock in position, and you would always be using 2 of the 5 external doors for the weapon pods, which are fixed to the crew compartment. Yeah, very cool. There you go then, a look around the interior painting details I've done on the Terrax Termite Assault Drill by Forgeworld. In terms of other work to do, well, I've got a few details probably to finish off around the doors. Obviously, when I come to paint this, I think I'm going to airbrush it. I'll need to mask off the doors to prevent ingress of the airbrush spray into the already painted crew compartment. It's ready to build now, so I'll be putting this together over the next few days, and then once I got it painted, we'll do a follow-on review, and depending how things go, I might just go for a full final review of the kit, the paint job and everything, or I might split it into 2, as I tend to have done in the past. We'll see. One final thought, and I almost forgot this. What I might do as well is I might just paint a couple of little warning icons next to the weapon bay door. I think that might add just a little something to it, because you don't want to have your hand near that if it closes. I hope you've enjoyed that little painting tour of the internal detailing I've done on my Terrax Pattern Termite Assault Drill. Please do share your thoughts and observations in the comments section. You know, are you a big fan of painting the interior of your vehicles, or do you not bother? Do you always seal them up? Or if you like to paint the vehicle details, how do you do it? Are you a person that likes to really go to town on the internal detailing and maybe add in some additional greebles and other fine details to make it come to life even more? As always, I'll be very interested to hear those thoughts and observations. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.